12 and a half minutes into TWA Flight 800, something went terribly wrong. What caused this 747 jet to explode into a fireball and plunge into the sea? The answer lay in a million pieces on the ocean floor. And now, the tragic jigsaw puzzle has been rebuilt. Clues to the nearly unsolvable mystery of TWA Flight 800. A summer's night marred by a tragic plane crash that sparks one of the most controversial investigations of all time. That evening, 230 passengers and crew were making their way to Kennedy Airport to board a TWA jumbo jet bound for Paris. At 8:19, after a delay of nearly 1.5 hours, TWA Flight 800 took off. Its flight path was to follow the coast of Long Island before heading out across the Atlantic.
TWA 800, you have traffic at 1 o'clock and 7 miles southbound, 1,000 foot above east 1900.
TWA 800 heavy, no contact.
TWA 900 leaving 15,000 direct Nantucket on course.
These are crowded skies. The TWA flight soon joined dozens of other airplanes flying into and out of New York.
2450. TWA 800, climb maintain 15,000.
TWA 800 heavy, climb and maintain 15,000, leaving 3,000.
The pilot of another plane saw Flight 800 coming toward him. As a courtesy, he went to flash his lights at the TWA plane to alert them of his presence.
So I reached up, took my eyes off just for about a split second as I grabbed the left inboard landing light switch, and looking at him, I flicked it on, and just as I did that, it's almost like it was a direct line from the switch to the airplane, and it blew. The first officer looked up then and saw the explosion, and I said, "What happened?" And I said, "Oh, it exploded."
We just saw an explosion out here, 6507.
6507, I'm sorry, I missed it. You're at 18, did you say something else?
We just saw an explosion up ahead of us here, somewhere about 16,000 feet or something like that. It just went down for the water.
Virgin 009, I'm sorry, your transmission is broken up. What do you
hand up, please. The 9 o'clock position, sir. It looked like an explosion of some sort, about maybe 6 miles out on my 9 o'clock position.
Roger that. Thank you very much, sir. We're investigating that right now. TWA 800, center. TWA 800, if you hear center, ident.
As he started the roll call, my first officer said, "I think it's TWA 800. And I said, "I think you're right." So I said, "God bless him."
TWA 800, center. TWA 800, if you hear center, ident. TWA 800, center.
I think that was him.
I think so.
God bless him.
The first to be notified of the disaster was the Coast Guard. Petty Officer Ken Seebeck and his crew made for the crash scene. Nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to see.
The flames is what struck me. They were just towering above the boat, and possibly a half mile, 3/4 of a mile long, burning wall of flames. It was strange. The sound of the flames was just roaring. the piece of the plane that was on the surface when we got there had many windows in it. We stopped counting windows. We were counting 30, 40 windows in the plane. You can see the flames behind the windows, kind of, you can see it just burning right through the plane.
60 miles away in Manhattan, the head of the FBI's New York office was heading home from a restaurant. Jim Kallstrom had made his name fighting the mob. He had put John Gotti, the infamous Teflon Don, behind bars. As his car pulled out, his pager went off.
I answered the beep on the phone, talked to the duty agent, and he said, Mr. Kallstrom, we have a TWA flight in the ocean, TWA Flight 800. Early reports of a massive fireball. I don't know how many passengers were on the plane. And of course, my foot went on the accelerator a little bit more.
Initial reports were saying that a plane exploded.
The plane appeared to explode in midair at an altitude of about 8,000.
The first television stations were breaking into their primetime shows with live news bulletins.
There have been an act of terrorism.
Foul play has not been ruled out.
Off Long Island, the Coast Guard was dodging the fiery wreckage, looking for survivors. It was a vain search that was to last all night. At home in Texas, Joe Lichner watched TV alone, horrified. His wife and 2 young daughters were on Flight 800.
We really didn't have any idea that there were no survivors. And you're sitting there and yet you're having visions of your daughter clinging to some wreckage, or your wife trying to swim and help the children, or of them laying in a hospital someplace, dying, calling out your name, and all you want to do is get there as fast as you can to be by their side.
We've found 7 bodies, and I think there are another 11 on their way in right now.
By now, Kallstrom had arrived at the FBI command center. His team was assembling around him, trying to figure out what had happened.
We were a week away from the Olympics, on a high state of alert from a terrorism standpoint. So my initial thought was, this could very well be terrorism. It could very well be multiple aircraft. If it was terrorism and if it was state-sponsored, we didn't know either. But if it was an act of war. We're in the business of looking at all possibilities. We're not the Federal Bureau of the Obvious, we're the Federal Bureau of what could have happened. So that evening, we're starting to chart out, put on a board, what are the possibilities? If a bomb, if a device, how could that have happened? Luggage, carry-ons, mechanics, people servicing the plane, people getting on the plane without authorization, personnel, passengers themselves in prior flights. What are all the possible scenarios how that could be done? I spent the night there in the command center, orchestrating, being the conductor of the symphony that was about to take on a major investigation.
Remember, we don't have a lot of answers right now.
But by law, this was not an FBI case yet. Responsibility for investigating air disasters belongs to the National Transportation Safety Board, at least until a crime is uncovered. In Washington, the NTSB GO team was gathering for the flight up to Long Island. To most of them, it seemed like an open and shut case.
Why did I think it was a bomb? Because it had all of the earmarks, all of the manifestations of that kind of thing. This was a catastrophic failure. That the flight crew had no opportunity to broadcast a mayday, to state there was something wrong. The airplane just went off a radar suddenly.
But to some investigators, the timing of a terrorist attack made no sense.
Why would a terrorist try to attack basically a milk flight from JFK to Paris when he could wait a week and get a full airplane going to the Olympics and make a much bigger impact in the press.
By daybreak, 101 bodies had been recovered from the waters around the crash site.
I want to caution the American people. We have no evidence. We have no evidence on this flight yet that would indicate the cause of the accident.
Morich's Coast Guard Station, Long Island. This is a quiet, middle-class town near the exclusive beach resorts of the Hamptons further east. But it was about to lose its sleepy charm. An army from more than 35 agencies was getting ready to invade. Several thousand agents, investigators, emergency volunteers, and reporters all swarmed to the area. The NTSB was conducting an accident investigation that focused on air safety, but they soon found themselves outgunned, dwarfed by the FBI, which was aggressively pursuing a criminal investigation.
The ratio of law enforcement people to NTSB people was about 100 to 1. It was like a scene that I had never seen before. All these people dressed in white that were basically examining all the baggage, and everything that they had found floating was brought into the hangar, and they had these tables set up, and it was just, I had never seen it before. It was amazing.
The NTSB urgently needed to find the plane's 2 black boxes. But the wreckage lay over a 25 square mile area under 130 feet of water. Finding anything in the murky depths would be a challenge.
Our early thoughts were a diver could go down and look through his mask and sort of look over the horizon and see these pieces of this tragic airplane. You know, here it was. It looks like an airplane in pieces. Well, we couldn't do that. You couldn't see more than 5 feet. And the plane was in a million pieces.
Couldn't see the bottom of the ocean because it was littered with debris from the airplane and the wreckage itself. And after talking to some of the divers, they sometimes didn't even walk on the ocean for a while. They were walking on the wreckage as they went from point to point, looking for, you know, remains, human remains, and such.
It was just a really bleak, sad, cold summer day, just dreary, and we're going out. I think we had 5 bodies to pick up, our parts thereof, and we had these guys were like literally, I mean, they're coming up to the surface holding these bodies. I mean, they had no other means. Some of them just, they didn't have a dive bag or a bag to actually bag them at the bottom, so they had no other recourse but to just like bear hug them and bring them up.
A week had now passed, and the NTSB was getting anxious. So far, they hadn't found the so-called black boxes, which actually are orange. Only these boxes could quickly solve the mystery of Flight 800.
We pin more hope on the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder than on any other aspect of the investigation.
The longer the boxes lay on the ocean floor, the greater the chance that salt water would destroy the tapes. The diving operation to find them was running 24 hours a day.
It was fairly late at night, 11 o'clock, 11:30, and then I hear shouts from somewhere on the ship back by the fantail saying they've got one of the boxes. And so I ran over to the monitor and wanted to find out which one they had. So I had the radio operator ask the diver, turn the box around, hold the box up in front of the light and in front of the camera so we can identify which box they had. And in fact, about that time, the other diver came in with the other box.
By now it was 2 o'clock in the morning. The boxes were rushed to shore and scheduled for an immediate flight to the NTSB labs in Washington. But the media got wind of the discovery.
This is a CVR, and this box housed the flight data recorder.
Can you tell by looking at the box what kind, or whether this was an explosion?
No, ma'am.
At 5 o'clock in the morning, the NTSB team gathered. Would the boxes reveal what happened in those last few minutes aboard Flight 800?
The Adrenaline Rush Hour, every weeknight at 8, only on TLC.
The ancient Maya offered human sacrifices in their lost city of gold, and touching the sacred Ark of the Covenant meant certain death. But greed will make people do many things. Treasure, jewels, gold, and greed. Friday on TLC.
Say, how about some blinds? Get them fast. Only Lowe's cuts the blinds you want with great brand names like Springs Faux Wood and Levelor. All in around 15 minutes. All at a guaranteed low price. Custom size now blinds. Now at Lowe's. Improving home improvement.
Today's forecast is absolutely outstanding. A gorgeous day with no sign of rain. Enjoy sunny skies throughout the afternoon.
There's only one thing truly predictable. Pure exhilaration in all weather conditions. Seville SDS. The power of and. The fusion of design and technology. Cadillac.
You can buy a Gateway Essential PC with a year of AOL included for $999. Or you can buy a PC from a bargain basement company for $599. Then add a monitor, lots of software, and a year of AOL, and end up paying over $1,100. With Gateway, you'll get all that, and you'll still end up paying $999. Which one's the real bargain? Call 1-800-GATEWAY for a Gateway Essential PC with an Intel Celeron processor.
Sunday on TLC, the Bermuda Triangle. Phenomena from around the world with one thing in common, lingering questions. The puzzling riddle of Atlantis. Bermuda Triangle, Unexplained Mysteries, and Atlantis. Sunday at 8 on TLC.
Next week, it's the best of TLC. 7 nights of our finest. We're talking appointment television here. Make a note, stick it on the fridge. An entire week of amazing TV. Dig in and experience the best of TLC. Every night beginning Monday at 8.
The question she had was a universal one. What do men want? Well, there are a few essentials that every man's wardrobe should have, from classic choices to more contemporary looks. Because what men want, well, that's complicated. But what they need, now that we know something about.
Happy Father's Day from the Men's Warehouse.
You're gonna like the way you look. I guarantee it.
It's the remarkable quality that makes a summer day sweeter.
Hi, how you doing? Good. Ready for that porterhouse? There you go.
It's the huge selection that can make an ordinary lunch special.
It's a little bit smaller, but the meat's a lot more tender. Would you like me to steam that for you here?
It's the great prices, it's the terrific people, and it's being part of your life. If there's a recipe for being your favorite supermarket, then these are all the ingredients.
The black boxes recovered from TWA Flight 800 were analyzed at the NTSB labs. The results dealt a crushing blow. The only thing on the tapes was a quarter-second sound of the plane breaking up. After offering so much hope, the recorders proved to be a dead end.
it's hard to explain the frustration and the letdown that occurs when you get those boxes and you know that they're not going to tell you what you need to know, and there are no more boxes. You can't go get others because they're not there. So it's very frustrating.
Now, 1 week after the crash, disbelief had given way to grief. 230 people had lost their lives, and no one could give their families any answers. 19 children had been left behind by the flight attendants alone. The relatives were now gathered at a hotel near Kennedy Airport. They spent their days in the formal ballroom, waiting to hear the grim news about their loved ones. Identification of the bodies was a torturously slow process. Joe Litzner's wife had been found, but he was desperately waiting to hear about his 2 young daughters. A tap on the shoulder would confirm the sad fact, but also bring some relief.
A week later, they tapped me again to go upstairs, and you're always wondering, who is it? You know, is it Shannon or is it Katie? And it turned out that it was my 8-year-old Katie that was recovered second and ID'd. And then you're sitting there wondering, okay, what do you do if you recover 2 and there's still one out there? So I made the decision then that if that happened, that I would cremate both of them and then, you know, spread their ashes over the water, because I knew that my wife would not want to leave Shannon out there alone.
Shannon Litzner's body was eventually recovered, as were all 230 passengers and crew. The last body was pulled from the wreckage 96 days after the accident. While the families were in agony, the investigation ground on painstakingly. A seemingly unending stream of collision debris was being lifted from the ocean floor, then cataloged and transported to a nearby hangar. Every one of the 1 million pieces of wreckage was examined for signs of a bomb, swabbed by chemists for traces of explosives, scrutinized by metallurgists for the distinct pitting or cratering caused by a powerful explosive. First, the FBI conducted tests. Then the NTSB performed theirs. Among the bomb technicians, there was intense professional competition to find that one telltale piece of metal that would unlock the mystery.
We all expected that we would find a eureka piece. We all expected, all of us, everyone on the team figured one day, be it 8 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, we never knew. When some piece came up out of the water, it would show clear evidence of the bomb.
But the FBI's apparent certainty that a bomb had caused the crash, despite a total lack of evidence, was beginning to ruffle feathers, even within their own camp.
I did find a very strong mindset of a bomb, a very obvious and very strong effort of trying to fit the evidence into a theory as opposed to letting the evidence speak for itself.
Then a discovery. The NTSB's Bob Swaim retrieved a piece of wreckage that would alter the course of the entire investigation.
Nobody does it like you.
Wind tunnel by Hoover is here. It's breakthrough technology. Tests show it picks up more dirt than any other clean air upright.
Nobody
Wind tunnel by Hoover.
does it like you.
Well, when you bowl, what are you doing? Rolling rocks. Very smooth, round rocks.
I visualize 10 rolling rock bottles down there, and what I'm doing is I'm
I'm reaching out to them. The motion's kind of a bow with a flourish. It's a gesture of respect to the Rolling Rock bottle. Sometimes I will bowl a 33 and I'll think, you know, that's just the fella upstairs saying that you're not that good at bowling.
The forces of nature are waging a war, and the target is your deck. But Thompson's will stop them, because when others fail, Thompson succeeds, protecting your deck like no other, guaranteed. Thompson's Wood Protector. It never takes a day off.
So in less than a tenth of a mile to go, two-time marathon champion John Cogway of Kenya pulling ahead of the chase pack into Central Park. Now, wait a minute. Someone is mounting a late sprint, and it's Japanese sumo wrestler Fujiyama. An incredible burst of speed from the Grandmaster. It's going to be close, and it's Fujiyama.
HPE Services Solutions can make everyone nimbler, quicker, and more competitive, even the big guys.
My doctor said occasional personal dryness is natural. She recommended KY. I chose KY Silk E. Nothing feels more natural.
KY Silk E with vitamin E from the #1 doctor-recommended brand.
Well, hey, Miss Palmer, how can I help you?
Hi, Bill. Time to rotate those tires. Tires. Drive on.
Inevitably, there will come a time in your life when you realize you need a cell phone. And when that time comes, we'll be here.
We are easily seduced by exotic treasures, but sometimes their beauty hides deadly secrets. TLC follows people whose quest for legendary riches led to their doom. Treasure, jewels, gold, and greed. Friday on TLC.
Sunday on TLC. The Bermuda Triangle. Phenomena from around the world with one thing in common. Lingering questions. The puzzling riddle of Atlantis. Bermuda Triangle. Unexplained Mysteries and Atlantis. Sunday at 8 on TLC.
Coming to TLC. Face the unexpected, the unthinkable, and the unidentified. Where TLC takes you to the front lines of life. Experience Best of TLC Week, beginning Monday at 8 on TLC.
Buzz, 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 buzz. Hello, Mosquito.
Hello, Mosquito.
Have you heard about the website discovery.com?
No.
They have a very useful travel section.
I love to travel.
They can help you research and book your trip and get local health warnings.
How interesting.
Buzz, 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 buzz.
The cause of the crash continued to puzzle the investigators until an NTSB researcher found a telltale piece of the plane.
It was odd because airplanes are a collection of curves and rounded shapes, but this was straight, and it was quite long for an airplane. So we started looking at it in greater depth, and it turned out that it had molten aluminum on the edges, and it was blackened all over. It was sooted.
A part number stenciled on the debris revealed that it was from the central fuel tank. The tank sits right in the middle of the airplane. The wings are attached to it. It's a large steel box, big enough for a person to stand in. The recovered piece was one of the reinforcing beams that should have been inside the tank, yet it had been blown out, and it was burnt. According to NTSB reports, everything pointed to an explosion in the fuel tank. What could have caused such a blast? The FBI theorized that a bomb had been planted somewhere close to the tank. But there was another possibility. Eyewitnesses had reported seeing something streaking up into the sky, a bright light, followed by an explosion. It was unthinkable, but could the plane have been shot down by a missile?
The missile theory was on the board the first night. We know there were missiles that were left in Afghanistan. We know that missiles had been stolen. Missiles were made to shoot airplanes down. So when you put the missile theory on the board, now you're concerned about where did the missile come from? Where was it shot from? What were the technical specifications? What would be left over? The casing, maybe a motor, maybe scotch marks on something. How would they get rid of that? If they shot it from a boat, what boat? Stolen boat? Friendly boat? Rented boat? How would it vacate the area?
North, south, east, west, go to a marina, go out to the high seas and be met by a submarine. I mean, the possibilities were endless.
It was now 3 months after the accident. While the FBI was still looking for signs of a terrorist act, the NTSB was developing its own frightening theory. What if the fuel tank simply exploded on its own? Flights to Europe across the Atlantic routinely carry most of their fuel in their wing tanks. The center tank is often nearly empty, full of air and vapor. Could that explode?
Having a little bit of fuel, 50 to 100 gallons of fuel, is exactly what you're looking for if you indeed have temperatures the right way to produce an explosive vapor.
If things got hot enough in the tank, could the air-vapor mix become volatile enough to explode? The plane had been sitting on the tarmac for 3 hours and 48 minutes prior to departure. The temperature at Kennedy Airport that day hovered at 81 degrees. The plane's air conditioning units had been going full blast, and they're located right beneath the fuel tank. The tank was effectively sitting on a hot plate.
Here we have the ductwork coming in from the engines, 350 degrees. Here we have one of the air conditioning packs. Some of the ducting in these air conditioning packs get hotter than that. That one right there gets up to 390 degrees. What we found was that immediately over all these sources of heat, we have the fuel vapors.
Just when it seemed the NTSB was making progress, there was a sensational development. 3 separate traces, or hits, of plastic explosives were discovered in the cabin wreckage. It was the moment the FBI's Jim Kallstrom had been waiting for. Here, he thought, was evidence of a bomb.
From a scientific and an objective standpoint, there were some very serious considerations that I think argued against that, not the least of which is these hits, from what I understand from the explosive residue chemists. 2 of the 3 are not found together in the same explosive, suggesting that it had to be 2 different kinds of explosives. From a material standpoint, they were also in regions that showed no appropriate material behavior or deformation or damage.
By the time that information came to light, we had a fair amount of the wreckage of that airplane, and it was very, very clear we did not have a bomb that exploded inside that airplane. I knew that. I mean, I knew that, absolutely knew that in my heart.
Investigators discovered that the explosives had been used in a dog training exercise months earlier. The traces had oozed out of packets planted during the test. For the FBI, who had been pushing the bomb theory, it was an embarrassing development. The residents of the small town of Montoursville, Pennsylvania, followed the investigation very closely. 16 of their high school students and 5 adult chaperones from their community had lost their lives. They were members of the high school French club, taking their first trip to Paris. For many of them, it was their first trip on an airplane. Coping with the loss of his 15-year-old daughter Michelle has been agonizing for Jeff Boland. For him and other families, the internet offered a kind of solace, allowing them to correspond easily with each other, to share their grief. But gradually, the electronic message board began to reveal a darker side. Outrageous theories about the cause of the accident began circulating over the net.
or gave demented people a chance to try to spread misinformation. So many conspiracy theorists were using this website that the webmaster set up a separate conspiracy page for those people to exchange their ideas.
Now these theories took a more disturbing turn. From out of nowhere came the startling accusation that the United States Navy had shot down the plane.
This week at IBM.com, Mike the lawyer's here from corporate to make sure we don't overpromise on a new ThinkPad T20. This thing is light, it's durable, it has an Intel Pentium 3 processor, which smokes, man. It's got titanium composite cover, a very cool keyboard light. You can order this bad boy from IBM.com, and I know the guys who used to pick on you in high school, not anymore, baby, no, because the ladies are going to be all over you. You can dance all of a sudden.
When you want the best of something, you have to ask for it by name. Otherwise, you get the house brand. For my money, Mobil One's the best, and today's Mobil One is even better. It's now tri-synthetic, so compared to conventional oil, well, in terms of protection, there's no comparison at all. Lots of oil change places have Mobil One. You just have to ask. The house brand, I wouldn't put it in my car.
Nothing outperforms Mobil One.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, Flight 126 has been cancelled. There is another flight, Union Atlantic Air Flight 176, at a gate 54. It has 5 remaining seats.
MySAP.com helps companies and people work together in real time.
Correction, 4 remaining seats.
Coming up, in the Lone Star State, everything's a little bigger, even emergency. See how San Antonio's ER doctors stand up to trauma next. Then see Black Box tonight on TLC. And for a rush online, go to Discovery.com and click on TLC.
I just learned the
Don't miss the once-in-a-lifetime magic as Six Flags New England takes to the skies with Superman Ride of Steel, one of 3 great new coasters, plus the new Batman Thrill Spectacular and the new Looney Tunes Movie Town.
Save up to $8 at Six Flags New England with coupons from Dunkin' Donuts.
I'm Noah Wagner. I've had the AIDS virus for 15 years. But I'm not here to talk about AIDS. As horrible as the disease is, now there's hope. Today, the people who need hope are the people with pancreatic cancer. It kills nearly 70 people a day, yet we know almost nothing about it. But we can change that with research. After all, just look how far we've come with AIDS. Just look at me.
Wild rumors began circulating over the internet, claiming that the Navy's guided missile destroyer, the USS Normandy, had fired a missile at the TWA plane. The Navy, which until now had been praised for its heroic recovery and salvage operation, was now under attack.
I would just like to say that there were no Department of Defense assets, either air, ground, sea, or undersea, which launched any missiles or ordnance. I think that this is a bunch of baloney.
I will answer that question in English.
It got worse. No less a personality than Pierre Salinger, President Kennedy's former press secretary, came forward to say that he'd seen secret military documents implicating the Navy.
That 154 people living in the Long Island area where the missile testing was going on saw 1 or 2 missiles rising in the air.
When Pierre Salinger came into the game,
it ratcheted the whole thing up to a new dimension. I mean, it had been around, this whole business of conspiracies and the U.S. government. It had been around, but it never had a spokesman who was the press secretary to the President of the United States. When I first heard that, I was just totally flabbergasted. And my first response was, you know, maybe he knows something that we need to know. Maybe he has some information.
Salinger's theory was based on an air traffic control radar tape that showed an unidentified blip crossing the path of the plane. Also, he had a document, which he claimed French intelligence had obtained from the U.S. Navy, stating that the area around the crash scene was being used for unspecified military maneuvers that night. A huge investigation of the Navy was launched.
I called up the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and he said it didn't happen. That was not good enough. I didn't question the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I didn't think he was lying to me for a second. But we had to independently say it wasn't so. 10,000 people would have to take place in this conspiracy to keep this quiet. We looked at all the satellite imagery. We looked at the ordnance on the ship, the Normandy. It was all accounted for. And by the way, the ordnance could not fly that far. We know exactly where the ship was. It was 185 miles south of the tragedy. The missiles can only go 100 miles. So technically, it couldn't reach TWA. And guess what? If they fired a missile that size, it would be obvious on radar because it's a big missile. And we wouldn't be looking at little holes in the plane the size of dimes and quarters. If a missile from the USS Normandy hit the plane, it would demolish the plane. And evidence, metallurgy evidence, would be everywhere. People wouldn't be looking at little pieces and 10 times and saying, geez, I wonder. It would slap you across the face. We want to assure the American public, we want to assure the families of the victims of this horrendous tragedy that nothing like that would ever take place under any circumstances.
The Navy's a suspect.
Remove him. Remove him.
The Navy's a suspect.
No matter what the FBI said, many people now believed that the government was covering up a deadly secret. Conspiracy theories flourished. And the startling story of Lance and Linda Cabot added fuel to the fire. On the night of July 17th, the Cabots were attending a party at a restaurant on the water. Linda, a professional photographer, was taking pictures of her friends. It was around 8:30, about the time when, unbeknownst to Linda, Flight 800 was passing overhead.
I looked through the images because we had just gotten them developed. Lance looked over my shoulder and, into the set of images and said, "What's that?" I really didn't think it was anything more than maybe dust or an anomaly in the developing process or something like a scratch on the negative.
Lance couldn't let it go. He saw something. He took the negative back to the local photo shop in West Hampton Beach and had an enlargement made of the sky where he saw the object. It confirmed his suspicions, and he decided to report it to the FBI.
One of the agents who was out on the lead came into the command post, the trailer, with a photograph, a color photograph of, in the background, up in the sky, of something in the right-hand corner, cylindrical in shape, that had a flame or plume to it. We got goosebumps. We kept staring at the photo, kept looking at it. We called in one of the other SACs, take a look at this, what do you think? It represented to us, at least at that time, that perhaps somebody had captured in just a split second a projectile in the sky.
The day after my husband had turned over the photograph and negative to the FBI, they requested that I meet them here at Dockers to retrace my footsteps to determine what direction I was facing when I took the image in question. And so I did so, and in facing this way, it was determined that I was facing north and eastward at a 1 o'clock heading.
Since Linda was facing north and the crash took place over the ocean due south, the FBI concluded that the photograph was not relevant. However, they never determined what the object was.
Who wrote up this chart?
And the quarterly earnings over productivity.
These figures do not add up.
5 percentage points.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, okay?
Post your resume on Monster.com today. AOL keyword monster.
Half day, Bob?
Okay, sweetie, on your toes. Swing through the ball, through it. Eye on the ball, hon. We're working on the forehand. Okay, let's try backhand. We'll work backhand. Okay, you just need to connect with the ball. Let's stay in the game, sweetheart. Now, don't be afraid to charge the net.
How do you plan on financing your retirement? Conseco's annuities have tax advantages that can help. Conseco, step up.
It's DTX. They want the numbers now. Okay, numbers sent.
DTX wants our numbers now. Only 2 more departments to clear.
We got it.
We got it.
We got it.
We didn't get it.
We got it.
This is the wireless workplace, and Aether drives it.
What's up with this?
I thought we could use a bigger office.
Aether, wireless solutions for a portable planet.
Maybe mechanics should go back to being mechanics. Maybe doctors should return to their patients. Maybe taxi drivers should be driving their taxis. Maybe we don't all need to be day traders. Maybe we can invest online without trading in our lives.
Coming up, in the Lone Star State, everything's a little bigger, even emergency. See how San Antonio's ER doctors stand up to trauma next. Then see Black Box tonight on TLC. And for a rush online, go to discovery.com and click on TLC.
The ancient Maya offered human sacrifices in their lost city of gold. And touching the sacred Ark of the Covenant meant certain death. But greed will make people do many things. Treasure, jewels, gold, and greed. Friday on TLC.
Sunday on TLC, the Bermuda Triangle. Phenomena from around the world with one thing in common, lingering questions. The puzzling riddle of Atlantis. Bermuda Triangle, unexplained mysteries, and Atlantis. Sunday at 8 on TLC.
Next week, it's the best of TLC. 7 nights of our finest. We're talking appointment television here. Make a note and stick it on the fridge. An entire week of amazing TV. Dig in and experience the best of TLC. Every night beginning Monday at 8.
Hello, fellow partially-eaten fish.
Hello there.
Have you heard about the website called Discovery.com?
Why, yes. It has interesting facts about the world we live in. And lots of practical information on stuff like health, traveling, and pets.
Wow.
They even have the news and weather.
After 20 months, the FBI ended its investigation of TWA Flight 800. Despite millions of dollars and millions of man-hours, they found no credible evidence of a bomb or missile. It was now up to the NTSB to solve the mystery. They undertook a staggering task: to rebuild the plane.
I really didn't dream that we would rebuild 90 feet of the airplane, which we have. It's clearly the largest reconstruction that's ever been done in any aviation accident investigation.
The NTSB was still working on the theory that heat from the air conditioning units could have brought the vapor in the central fuel tank to flashpoint and caused it to explode. Boeing, the manufacturer of the plane, thought it was impossible. To find out, the NTSB flew an identical plane simulating all the conditions of TWA Flight 800 and placed 92 temperature sensors in the tank. They found that the tank heated up to extraordinarily high temperatures, to 127 degrees in some areas, well past the point at which the vapors could ignite. Boeing countered that even if the fuel vapor did explode, the blast would not be powerful enough to bring down a 747.
Boeing had indicated to us early on that they didn't believe that a simple explosion, unaided by some kind of explosive charges or other event, simply a fuel air explosion in the center tank could create the pressures that would be needed to fail the airplane.
But the NTSB had conducted an earlier investigation in the Philippines in which a central fuel tank had exploded and blown the roof right off the plane. An NTSB report concluded that if the plane had been in the air, a catastrophic crash would have taken place. The truth was that surprisingly little was known about the properties of Jet A fuel, the aviation fuel used by TWA and most other commercial airliners. The NTSB began a series of tests. They ignited the fuel and discovered, much to their amazement, that the blast produced was 3 times the force needed to destroy a plane. But they needed to understand exactly how an explosion in the fuel tank would bring the plane down, to work out the sequence of events that would end with the 747 in literally a million pieces. Jim Wildy, the NTSB's top metallurgist, was faced with the world's biggest jigsaw puzzle. Where was he to begin?
The first clue to the breakup sequence was a series of pieces, mainly across the top of the fuselage, that had a series of curls on them. These pieces started on the right side of the airplane with a big curl on this piece and progressed across the top of the airplane all the way over to the left side, and this indicated that there was a series of pieces that broke off across the top of the airplane sequentially from the right side to the left side, ending at the window belt.
Evidence found on the reinforcing beams of the central fuel tank supported the theory that an explosion occurred there.
The bay in front of the tank is a dry bay right here without fuel, and we noticed some very interesting features. Right here on the back side of the front spar was a series of witness marks that went all the way across the back side of the front spar. These witness marks indicated that spanwise beam 3 broke at the top, rotated forward, and impacted the back of the front spar. This is as a result of an overpressure event or an explosion inside the wing center section fuel tank.
The NTSB stages the largest hearing to date on an airline disaster.
Such as TWA 800 never occurs.
After 18 months of investigating TWA 800, the NTSB is ready to give its definitive account of the events of that night. They had created a dramatic computer animation of the flight. As the plane climbs away from Kennedy Airport, the fuel vapors in the center tank are at a flash point. At 13,800 feet, a spark ignites the vapors, causing an explosion. In a quarter of a second, the center of the plane is torn apart, causing the heavy nose to break off. The plane's center of gravity shifts back, and what's left of the plane tilts sharply up. With the engine still under power, the plane climbs another 2,000 feet before stalling. Flight 800 is now in a 17,000-foot death dive. As it gathers speed, the stresses on the wings become too great. They snap off, releasing thousands of gallons of fuel into the burning plane. This is the first time they have been confronted with what happened to their families aboard the plane. For many, their worst nightmares are confirmed.
We all have visions
of what our family members experienced when that plane fell apart at 17,500 feet. And our greatest fears are that they didn't die immediately, that they knew what was happening, and that they experienced pain and fear. Over the process of the investigation, I have always hoped that I would be able to find some indication that they died immediately. But unfortunately, everything that I see, and all indications are, because they were sitting in the back of the plane, that they didn't die immediately, that they knew what was happening. And the terror that they must have experienced is something that I just can't get out of my head.
The FBI and the CIA, we need an independent investigation to find out what really happened.
For many skeptics, the NTSB hearing still left one big question unanswered. Why did so many people report seeing a bright light climbing into the sky, followed by the sound of an explosion? CIA analysts were called in to examine all the witness statements.
CIA's conclusion? The eyewitnesses did not see a missile.
What the witnesses saw, the analysts say, was the burning remains of the plane as it climbed 2,000 feet into the sky. The boom that followed was the sound of the fuel tank explosion that had taken place 49 seconds earlier. The sound waves had taken that long to reach the shore. It was a simple case of light traveling faster than sound. After the hearing, FBI Chief Jim Kallstrom retired. Even though he's convinced now that no bomb or missile was involved in the crash, Kallstrom has refused to officially close the investigation. He's left it pending inactive, just in case. While the investigators now agree that it was an explosion in the fuel tank that destroyed the plane, a mystery still remains.
There's another piece to the puzzle, and that is, if the fuel air vapor was in fact explosive, what ignited it? What was the source of ignition?
The NTSB is now solely focused on trying to find that ignition source, the vital spark that caused the explosion. There are more than 150 miles of wiring on the 747. Some of the wires run through the center fuel tank to power the fuel probes. They carry a very low voltage, insufficient to cause a spark. But outside the tank, it's a different story.
This is the actual wiring harness that contains the wiring for the center tank of the 747. Behind me is the forward spar, and we're in the forward cargo compartment. However, notice, in the same wiring bundle, we have generator cables running in from an engine inches away, not right in contact, but inches away. We have, as we counted, close to 400 other power wires routed with the center tank wires, giving the capability for a potential short circuit, putting power into the center tank wires from another system.
NTSB investigators now suspect that a short circuit in an adjoining high-voltage cable sent a powerful current down the wires that run through the fuel tank. If the wires were corroded, it could have caused a spark. The TWA jet was 25 years old. When the FAA inspected older planes of TWA and other airlines, they were alarmed by the poor state of the wiring. In fact, the Federal Aviation Agency is so concerned about this potentially deadly combination of fuel vapor, heat, and electricity, they've ordered operators of older 737s, 747s, and 767s to check their planes for corroded wiring. This search is aviation's most urgent task, to find the tiny spark that destroyed the biggest passenger airplane in the world.
Coming up, in the Lone Star State, everything's a little bigger, even emergency. See how San Antonio's ER doctors stand up to trauma next. Then see Black Box tonight on TLC. And for a rush online, go to discovery.com and click on TLC.
Coming to TLC. Face the unexpected, the unthinkable, and the unidentified. Where TLC takes you to the front lines of life. Experience Best of TLC Week, beginning Monday at 8 on TLC.
You're watching TLC, Adventures for Your Mind.
On an airplane is The Other Passengers. Air Rage, next on TLC. On an all-new Trauma, the open road calls and biker mishaps follow.
Kind of trauma season, as we like to call it.
And a stabbing victim gets violent. An all-new Trauma, Life in the ER on Tuesday at 8 on TLC.
Imagine being crammed on an airplane with 350 other passengers. You're fighting for elbow room with the person next to you, and the baby in the row behind you has just started screaming. Then, one of the other passengers loses control. At 30,000 feet, this man had to be subdued by passengers and crew.
Sooner or later, there could well be a major catastrophic accident.
Are taken to the skies. Airlines and the police are grappling with a violent and growing problem, one that puts every traveler's life at risk. Air rage.
The feeling that I have on that aircraft is a fear. Fear for my life. Fear so bad